So the 2025 season is mostly done in Europe, and objectively speaking, it was a great season for underdogs, and returns to glory. Now, if you think some of the things that happened this season were wild, what if we rewound the clock exactly 100 years ago? Will we find any familiar culprits? Or are there some things we couldn't even fathom today? Spoiler alert, it's actually a mix of both. Now, starting with very familiar territory for those who keep up with this channel, we're starting with La Liga. This season, FC Barcelona performed a clean domestic sweep of all trophies. And 100 years ago, we were actually doing the same thing. Except, obviously, the Super Cup didn't exist. And neither did La Liga. See, La Liga didn't exist until 1929. Before that, clubs played in regional tournaments. The Copa del Rey sort of served as the pseudo-national league as it was founded all the way back in 1903. In Barca's case, under manager Rolf Kirby, we played in the Catalan Championship, or the Campionat de Catalunya, with Espanyol as a runner-up. Some things never change. Then, in the Copa del Rey, Barca won the final 2-0 against Arenas Club de Getxo, a foundational Basque club which was very present in the upper echelons of Spanish and Basque soccer in the early 20th century. But they started to decline in the 1930s, unto today where they now play in the 4th tier of Spanish football. Scoring first for Barca was Josep Samitier, one of Barca's first on-field legends, and the all-time leading goal scorer when he retired in 1939. The second was scored by Agustí Sancho. Now, moving to England, the first place in the world to get the jump on the professional game, and association football's homeland in a sense, this year Liverpool reclaimed their title after 4 years and 5 seasons of Man City dominance. 100 years ago, a different era of dominance was sweeping the nation. The reign of Huddersfield Town, who at the time won their second straight First Division title. These days, Huddersfield calls League One, the 3rd tier, home. Liverpool finished 4th 100 years ago, and unlike these days, 4th place finishers were not even comforted with a European place, as the idea of a Champions League was still about 30 more years away. The Man City of 100 years ago placed 10th, but their player, Frank Roberts, was top goal scorer, with 31 goals. The FA Cup is the world's oldest cup competition, and Crystal Palace in 2025 won their first ever major first-tier trophy at Wembley. 100 years ago, Wembley was visited by a team that just got their hearts broken there this year. In 1925, Sheffield United won the FA Cup, defeating Cardiff City 1-0, with the lone goal being scored by ace left fielder Fred Turnstall. This would be Sheffield United's last top division title. Now, on to Italy. This year, Napoli claimed their second title in 3 seasons. In the Cup, Bologna won their first title in over 50 years, with their win over AC Milan in the Coppa Italia final. Now, want to know what Bologna were doing 100 years ago? Well, they were winning the damn league. And it was a milestone back then, too, as it was their first ever title at the highest level, being only founded in 1909. Mario Mignozzi was the top scorer with 19. He played for Livorno. Now, you might be wondering, what about the Coppa Italia? Did Bologna win that too in 1925? Unfortunately, the Coppa wasn't played, as it was not yet popular enough to be a recurring tournament. The latest champion up to this point was Vado, who play in the 4th tier these days, and they won that back in 1922. The Coppa Italia would be absent from the Italian football calendar until 1935, where it's been a staple ever since. Now let's head to Germany. Bayern Munich reclaimed their league back from Leverkusen, and Stuttgart won their first title since 1997, defeating surprise finalists Arminia Bielefeld in the final. If we rewind 100 years ago, it was a time where the Bundesliga was not yet formed, and German football was very regional. The same sort of case as Spain earlier in this video. But the champions of every region, and starting in 1925, funnily enough the runners-up of every region, would qualify for the German Championships, a knockout tournament, and the 1925 tournament was won by FC Nuremberg, who were a force to be reckoned with in the 1920s, with this being their 4th title in 5 seasons. And just like Italy, the cup competition was not a thing yet, so no DFB Pokal winner here. Nuremberg won the title 5 more times in the 20th century, with the last so far being 1968. Their latest title at all at the highest level is the 2007 DFB Pokal, where they beat today's champions Stuttgart. Nuremberg have been missing from the Bundesliga since 2019, kicking about in the 2 Bundesliga. So finally, in France. This year was especially boring, as PSG claimed both the league and cup titles. Funnily enough though, 100 years ago, it was also a Parisian party when it came to football. But it wasn't PSG. The 2 merged clubs that make the basis of PSG were Paris FC and Stade de Germain. Stade de Germain did exist in 1925, but they weren't really doing anything notable. Paris FC wasn't founded until 1969, merging with Saint-Germain a year later, only to back out and become independent again in 1972. Now, both sides are destined to clash as Paris FC is back in the top division for the first time since 1973. 100 years ago, PSG wasn't even an idea. Instead, CASG Paris, aka the Generals, won the 1925 Coup de France after defeating FC Rouen in the final. CASG Paris merged with another team in 1951, but were supposedly revived in 2020, but I couldn't really find any information about that, at least not in English. So for the league, by 1925 in France, most football wasn't really professional, and there hadn't been a national league since 1919. The closest we have is the 1927 season when the National Amateur League returned. That title was won by CA Paris, Cercle Athletic Paris, who actually still exists today as CA Paris Charenton, as they merged with SO Charentonais in 1964. So as you can see, 100 years ago, the football landscape was very different, but we still have some familiar title-winning culprits today. In the case of Spain, FC Barcelona had already established itself as a dominant regional and even national force by 1925. And in 1925, Bologna, shout out the Red and Blue gang, were also winning major titles just like today. And in the 1920s, French football was dominated by Paris, just not the Paris we know today, or the Paris is. But in places like England, you got teams you couldn't even fathom winning a major top-tier title today, like Huddersfield, who did manage to come back to the Premier League a few years ago, but were quickly relegated back and are now in League One. And them winning something like the FA Cup, the League Cup, or being promoted back up to the Premier League and then winning it is nothing short of a miracle. And in Germany, despite Nuremberg's relatively mediocre status today, you can see just what kind of deep roots they have in German football culture, by just how much they won in the 20th century, especially the 1920s. So thanks everyone for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.